This is going to be the biggest 3 years for recruitment and agency recruitment specifically that there's ever been, is my view. And it's quite simple with the reason why.
So Jordan.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, you watching. Hello, everyone.
It's very nice to see you.
And to you, man.
I haven't seen you for a few months, although we've communicated quite a lot in that time with
Yes,
regard to Atlas.
you gave me you gave me a lot of advice on nutrition, which got me thinking quite a bit.
Yeah, come on. What have you been implementing?
Let's talk about
nutrition. Yes.
The 12 to 6 one. So I think I've lost 8 kilos since I last saw you.
So
something ridiculous like that.
What do you mean 12 to 6? So you stop at 6 p.m. and you don't start again until midday next day?
And I'm eating nuts, and I'm now eating Greek yogurt for desserts.
Yeah,
like the thing which you were like, it's the Greek yogurt and berries.
It's all about pre and postbiotics. Loads of kimchi. You eating kimchi?
No, I was looking for some good snacks. And
snacks
that I like cottage cheese. I've been doing.
Yeah, that's not very nice. No, it's fine. It's just not very nice. Dark chocolate's great. Nuts.
The nuts I've been doing.
Yeah, nuts are really good. Dark chocolate, berries. Can't really go wrong with any of those three, provided they're organic.
If they're inorganic.
Yeah, well, it's not so good because you're just eating pesticides, which are not a lot of fun. I will start talking about recruitment in a minute. You've now got me on this tangent where
recruitment in healthcare.
I'm not going to come off. No, that's good. Do you feel good on it though?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it is great. I can now fit into my my wedding tux once more. That was the issue. That was the impetus that was needed. Anyways, yes. So no, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. I'm really pleased that you have done. I'm really pleased that you're here. There's a load of things I want to talk to you about in the world of AI and recruitment and Atlas in general. I know who you are, but maybe some people watching this don't. So could you give a very brief elevator pitch of like who is this guy? Who's this crazy fasting guy who's coming in and not eating anything?
Yeah, comes in, doesn't eat, leaves. So I'm Jordan, for those who don't know. My first company was not in the recruitment business, was an expert network, which was quite similar to recruitment, or at least the first half. We built that, for the 5 years that I was there, it got to $40 million revenue, 300 people across 5 offices. Really great. Really fantastic first go at this entrepreneurial journey. Really, when Gen AI had come out, GPT-2 this was, got me very excited. This technology was just flipping tremendous. And I wanted to essentially go again, but couldn't compete against my first business. So I thought, what's the software that I built most closely related to? And recruitment was the obvious choice. So we founded Atlas. We built it for 13 months before deploying it. And now we have hundreds of seats and customers. It's been a really great journey, and we're probably still at the beginning of it. 5 months into minimum level product, and yeah.
And I'm one of those customers. So, I love the product. I love the platform. We were using a previous database, which for me, using it as a recruiter was very much a recruitment database that people were then trying to add little bits of AI into to integrate and try and optimize. And there wasn't actual real world value. It's quite hard to find actual value there from a day-to-day perspective as a recruiter. My understanding of Atlas from just being a user is it seems very much like this is an AI model. This is an AI-based platform that's then been oriented in the direction of recruitment. And actually everything it does is super value add to the recruiter in the extent that it takes away everything you have to do other than recruitment. So it allows you to position yourself. It brings the human element of the recruitment job to the fore, and it gives you more time to do that, less time to do, tasks that recruiters typically are not very good at, like to-do lists and administration and this sort of thing. And then the thing I really like about it is having the ability to query the model in real time about somebody's suitability to a role that you might be recruiting for. So a use case that some of my team use, for example, would be to try and distill the core requirements of a job spec, to then build that into the AI and basically question, like, this is my understanding of this job description. Here's the job description. Am I on the right track? what are some of the key skills and tenets I should be looking for when I'm speaking to people to assess whether they are right or wrong. And then we can go down the road with it. Like we can get questions to ask and know what the answer should be. So now we can start technically assessing people to an extent. So we're finding that our qualification and our human kind of led engagement with candidates is getting so much more intelligent, but also so much more rewarding because we're doing a better job. People are more bought in as a result. We're having better outcomes and also having to do less of the more laborious tasks. So it's been great. Really enjoying using it.
Thank you. And that's great to hear. And there's a lot more that's coming. It's funny, when we were building it, because these CRMs, and they are really functional in what they do. Now, I obviously dislike the admin piece of it, which is big. But they do some cool stuff and they do organize things to an extent. When we were building this, like any business, you have to think, how do I sell this product? Because with the CRM, I need to make all the basic features and then it's also got to be 10x better. So we had to decide, let's do the cool stuff really first to give it that point of differentiation. And so now we're currently doing the basics. So really boring features that other people have already done.
Yeah.
But it's good because you see the people and you're on the chat and we can see people say, oh, I'm doing this, but this doesn't quite flow well. And so we're really doubling down on this currently. Just if you're clicking one too many buttons, let's get rid of that. That doesn't need to be AI. And once that process is done, which I reckon is going to be in a month or so, we're going to go a bit ballistic on AI. And some of the things that are in the pipeline are, again, taking what you're using and really enjoying and saying, let's just put rocket fuel into that. And what's really cool about the product is that we have a unique data set, right? Which is your data. Any other AI company has only the small amount of data, well, the AI model that everyone has, and then a small amount of data for the purpose that they use it for. But because we have the eidetic memory of your entire company, some of the things we can do are quite tremendously cool. The magic message is coming out. I don't know, when is this one going to be to market?
This probably within a few weeks, I would imagine.
It has already come out, as you've seen.
Yeah.
So just one example is that, when you're reaching out to candidates and sometimes, well, quite often they'll be the same people.
Yeah.
And it might be you the second time, but someone else the first time. And obviously you don't bother looking through every piece of communication. And so particularly if you're doing a campaign where you're reaching out to 20 people, it's the same on the BD side. There is that risk of, well, I just need to be efficient with my time, but you might not optimize that message, which generally means refer to the fact that you actually spoke 3 months ago, or they turned down a position 6 months ago. Or maybe 2.5 years ago, you got them to the end of a process, or your friend or your colleague did. The magic message has all this already, has it on memory. And you write a message, you click this button, and it's going to then look through the entire communication and rewrite that message with the same intent, but just so it continues from the conversation. Hey, John, I know that 3 months ago, my colleague chatted with you about this. What about that? So it's kind of simple, but the only way you can make that is by having the eidetic memory in the first place, which is unique to us.
Which is, for me, like super useful. We are predominantly a remote business. And if I think back to my early recruitment experience of very in the office, you were reliant on a lot of shouting across a desk to kind of get those updates of like what happened with this guy, because you were always reliant on someone having properly completed the entries in the database, which traditionally recruiters are not very good at. So you'd never have a full picture of the history of someone that you're trying to contact. And then sometimes you'd fall foul because it'd be like, look, I spoke to this person about this same job last week, but it's not tracked in the database anywhere. And then I think as people go more remote, you lose that, the shouting across the desk to get information in real time. And especially when you start working remotely in different countries and that sort of thing, all of a sudden it's like you've got to create a video call and you've got to sit on a call with each other and you've got to ask those questions just to get a very basic bit of data. So those sort of concepts of like the memory of the company and then being able to wield that, fairly seamlessly in real time without having to do much effort is going to make a massive difference for firms that are remote first and they don't have that level of just understanding of what other people are doing. And you're going to avoid all those awkward scenarios. And like you say, it's going to be so much warmer for Mr. Candidate or Mr. Client who's getting a message where there's some accurate reference around the previous communications that they had. You mentioned like GPT-2 was out, you were really excited. Are you a natural, because your background previously was hedge funds, right? But you were on the business side?
I was on the investment team.
Yeah.
Yeah. I invested in companies for a couple of years. But I think that the product side comes because I went into this quantimental analyst stuff. It was very short-lived because it got over-succeeded. But generally my view was data is everywhere. And instead of relying on the income statements and what the management say about a business, I thought, well, the data is just available. Why don't I just scrape that data? So I would write scraping scripts to pull this information down, and then I would build my investment cases upon that data. And then that's probably where the product side of things started.
So are you a natural techie? Like, do you enjoy the tech side of it, like writing scripts, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I generally like, because it's kind of it is a complex problem when you're building software, because it's huge. Particularly Atlas is a big full system, which means that it's a puzzle. And it's a puzzle where there's strings all over the place, and you pull a string over there, something over there breaks. And I find that quite fascinating to build. And but generally I like to build stuff that's maybe gets rid of the shit that I don't like, because I hate admin. I'm not very good at it. And I think that is an enjoyable thing in itself. The fact that I now have all of my to-dos for me, they're done. And now I just feel ashamed that I do so few of the things that I seem to promise to people.
Yeah, now you're talking my language.
I was like, oh no, here's 10 promises I made today and I've totally forgotten.
Yeah. Gets to 6 o'clock and you're like, God, I haven't done any of it. Spinning it into recruitment. So you obviously made the decision of, okay, this is an industry that's fairly close. Did you come into building the product with a conceptual understanding of the variations of recruitment, the flows and everything else? Or did you go in purely from like a bottom-up tech perspective, and then just, like you said, some of the more vanilla kind of recruitment flows are now being added on now? Like, did you come with much conceptual knowledge of like, what are the use cases in the real world?
Probably not to an extent. So expert networks are similar in the first half. So as an example, I am Apax Partners, a big private equity firm, and I'm looking to acquire Bullhorn. So I go to Prosapient, my first company, and I say, look, looking to learn about Bullhorn, can you connect me to 10 former executives, please, and 20 customers? And I want to discuss these things. So you go hunting for these people, you qualify the knowledge, and then you present them to the client. And so that piece is quite similar to recruitment. The second piece is very different because the expert network stops with, call is booked, $1,000 please. The candidate it's really an easy sell. Do you want to earn a couple of $100 to talk about the thing you know everything about? Sure. You know, I think I got 400 euros to talk to someone about what I like to do when I go skiing. It was brilliant. They were trying to sell this surfing thingy in a ski resort. I'm like, okay, I wouldn't buy that, but that's the difference. So when I came to the recruitment, I was like, right, I've built this product for 5 years. I've built a full system that supports expert networks, and 90% of it is the same. But then, of course, it was so I had the blueprint to build a big product quite quickly, which is the reason why Atlas, after a short period of time, is a full system already. But I've had to really listen to the customers that come on board, because there are some things that are totally different, which I just didn't know.
Yeah, because it's such a varied industry. And you take what we do, we are tip of the spear, headhunting, and it's very like extensive interaction, relationship building, really building like deep understanding of the culture of the clients you hire for, but it's big fees, so you don't need to do lots of placements in order to have good yields. But then there'll be the other side of the coin, even in technology markets, where it's ultra transactional and they need to hire 1,500 software engineers a year, and they don't pay a huge amount of money. And there's going to be agencies though that can probably generate really big yields as well, but their methodologies around how they actually recruit are completely different. What I'm really interested in talking about, because I'm not particularly a technical person in a sense of, I don't get excited about it. I get excited about recruitment. And I've started recently hosting these webinars for people in the industry. So not recruitment people, but techies, people that work in banks and hedge funds who want to understand more about the market and where it's at. Because I think we're in that market is being disrupted 100%, and it's becoming a very difficult marketplace for lots of people, and then becoming a really good marketplace for a smaller amount of people. On these webinars, we do these just like live Q&A sort of things where I'm like, look, anything you want to know about recruitment, ask me and I'll tell you the truth. And I'm expecting like, this agency said this to me, is that true or whatever? But actually what comes in is, how do I optimize my CV for the ATS? Because it's now all done by AI. How is AI affecting how recruiters find me? How are companies using AI to hire people? What do I need to do? And this is technologists who are asking these questions, who should in theory have a much deeper understanding of how the models and that sort of thing work. So I think we're at a point of like, everyone has got, depending on their worldview, a lot of fear about what the next few years hold, or a lot of excitement about where the industry can go from an AI perspective. But as someone who's like one of the people that are building it to a large extent in terms of how AI will be integrated into recruitment, what do you see? Like, what do you think is going to happen industry-wide, macro? Just industry-wise, like, how do you think it plays out over the next few years?
This is going to be the biggest 3 years for recruitment and agency recruitment specifically that there's ever been, is my view. And it's quite simple with the reason why. What is happening to, well, let's say I'm a talent acquisition person and I pop a job on the old LinkedIn, C++ developer with a few other bits and pieces. Immediately now, she gets 1,000 applicants with identically perfectly matched resumes. So before, resumes were used to pick out the people you wanted to speak to. That is now not possible at all. And what they then do is say, oh, Jesus, well, my screening approach is broken. I can't screen 1,000 people. I can't tell the difference between any of these people. So, okay, I'll try a test, I suppose, as the first thing. And then, as you know, that was self-select the worst ones, because the best ones will go to you and say, hey, Craig, looking for a job. And if you back them, you're going to say, fantastic, I happen to know 5 people that will be perfect for you. And in the same way, the point is now the yield that TAs going to get is way lower because they haven't got any insight beyond the resume. Recruiters, or the good ones, they know their market. They have relationships with their market. And if they use Atlas, they have perfect memory of all of those things. So now I'm going to think, right, I am the hiring manager. I used to go to my TA team, but now they're handicapped. But I know I can call Craig up and say, look, I'm hiring this C++ engineer. This is what I need. Who shall I speak to? And you're going to say, look, I've got 3 guys that you should, 2 ladies that you should. And you know, because you know people way more than their resume. And so that is now going to become a much more lucrative commodity. And so I think that you're going to see a bigger shift towards agency. In fact, I think if we put the number of what % of hires are made with agency, this will increase the next few years.
Yeah, I completely agree for slightly different reasons, but largely similar at the same time. But I also think that potentially you're giving agencies a little bit too much credit in that outlook, where there aren't that many good ones. That's the problem of recruitment. In my opinion, unless you recruit for recruiters, you don't understand the industry that you recruit for because you're in recruitment. So if you are a tech recruiter trying to hire a C++ engineer and you don't know what the supplementary technology around C++ is, why it's used, what parts of the business it falls into, what attributes actually makes a good software engineer, you're going to really struggle to carry the credibility in anything more than one go round, because Mr. Hiring Manager or Mrs. Hiring Manager, now bypassing talent acquisition, says, Craig, you've given me 3 options, who should I speak to? You should speak to Sandra, and Sandra's useless. You've now lost your credibility, you've lost your buy-in. So that scenario that you have foreseen, I completely agree with, plays out perfectly for me. Plays out perfectly for my team, because we're really fucking good at all that stuff. But we are small, we're lean, we're agile, we don't have huge volumes of clients. We have the bandwidth of knowing we have work for the next 3, 4, 5 years. We don't do business development. We spend all our time learning and getting better and dealing with candidates to be able to give those referrals. And I agree that the word of the recruiter, the reference, the testimonial is going to become so much more important than it's ever been because of all the reasons that you mentioned. But I think there's like 90% of the market in the recruitment world, they are coming out of that bigger company hamster wheel of like just CVs out, get on the phone, do this, do that. And everything is oriented towards the placement. They don't treat the candidates particularly well. They don't invest time to understand the knowledge. They don't build the relationships. So for those people, yes, the agencies are going to become more as the relied upon method, but it's going to be a really small percentage of them.
Okay, yes, you make a point. I would counter to say that the mix will be the same pre and post AI. So if, let's say, 10% of recruiters were great and 9% were bad, that would change much pre-AI and post-AI, probably the same. So, and the same in TA, because I imagine it's the same concept. There'll be some amazing people and some terrible people, like in every industry. So then the only change is that someone has become handicapped into how they can source. So while it might not be as extreme, perhaps, net, you have more access. And then there's obviously a few other important points about being independent, I suppose. But you know, such the fact that you can do a reference and the other person doesn't know who the company is. So you can ask questions that the TA person can't. Like you could say, what good company would this person hate working at?
Yeah.
And that's a really great reference when they don't know what company is going to hire them.
Yeah.
Right? But if I'm a small lean startup and the other person knows, they'll say, "Oh, I wouldn't like working at a big company. They're like a nice small startup because that's it." But that's no different from pre to post AI.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And it's interesting because I think for that bottom 90%, the bigger agencies are going to struggle, in my opinion. And I think that bottom 90% will over leverage AI and it'll become just send 10,000 emails a day and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And they'll drop down into being 1- and 2-man bands for low value placements, but high volumes. And you can do the job with that and drop your fees, and you could probably earn a pretty good income sitting at home doing the job and using AI in that way to support you. And then I think the other end of the market, the top 10%, will go to the highest level of recruitment, which is, you know, real headhunting of exceptional people. And actually the human element of those processes are going to even more come to the fore than they ever have been. And the arc has sort of been interesting, where when I started in 2008, our go-tos were the database, first and foremost. Anyone who's relevant to this keywords, they come up in your search, they get the mail shot, they send their CV, you call them, and it was very like database driven, and then get on the phone. I think with LinkedIn's emergence, it's become much more get into LinkedIn, get on the in-mails, get on the messages. People don't want to be called so much anymore. Like, I think the arc now on the candidate side is going to swing back, where they're going to get so fed up with so much outbound rubbish that will come from the lower echelons of the market, the refreshing call from someone who knows what they're doing. So again, Mr. Candidate who really is looking for that startup, great environment, blah, 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 blah. Like, the recruiter is going to be the one to steer them there. And the same on the candidate side. The client is looking for the exceptional person that does X, Y, Z. The recruiter is going to be the one to steer them there. But they're going to have the knowledge base to stack up. And then the beauty for me of Atlas is it takes away everything else and does it for you. So you can put all of your time into just getting better at the job, what the job truly is, which is relationships at the end of the day.
It's quite funny, and you put that, because I see a lot of people using Atlas in different ways, and it reminds me that I can see that there'll be different flavors of how people use it. One example is that one of our customers, he's created a template to kind of gauge how good people are interviewing. So he's made actually a template, in which obviously it's an open canvas, but a lot of people would want to do that, but just haven't thought about it. So he's written, okay, this is how I like to interview. Give me a very frank viewpoint on how I did versus what my ideal would be. And he runs that, and it's like, right, this is my...
Based on the call that he's having with
So he'll just use one of the templates, but instead of having a template like biggest strengths, what do they say about X? He will say, this is my process. I do these things. What did I miss, if anything, from this call? The next one would be, did I speak clearly, or did I do this? Or this is my competencies I needed to get. Did I ask the right questions to get that? And he's using it that way.
That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, which is like, I was like, that's pretty cool.
Because again, for juniors, if the senior recruiters in a firm could template out, this is a gold standard call criteria, candidate interview criteria, whatever, they can benchmark themselves against it. Especially if you're in that sort of remote environment where it's hard to get real-time feedback, you can use the platform to critique you.
You just give me a flipping great idea. So just, I need my linear so I can just ping it to the dev team to test.
This is what happened when we were together in September.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just throwing ideas at you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've taken them in. So, it's, but that's the point. I think I'm a bit of a sponge when it comes to things, because I know that you can get a bit too sidetracked into what you think is what people want. And sometimes you hear things that people say are problems or things they'd love, and you can see that there's a problem underneath. And this is how I think product should always be done. It's never about the feature, it's about the problem the feature solves. If you're a technologist, what you should know is that your job is to think about the most acute problems that someone has, and they're going to have a feature they believe is a solution. But sometimes actually there'll be a better solution because they're not a technologist. So for me, it's more, I need to just be open to problems. And what are the most acute problems? And you've given me something quite interesting there, because what I'm realizing as we think about the enterprise and how do you tackle the enterprise, rip out Bullhorn from a 100-seat company who has built all of their processes upon this technology. And training is one of them. And that kind of thing where you say, well, actually, we have, we've got an interview academy where we do all these interview training, pair training. Actually, well, we have all the information about the interviews anyway. So you can tell us what a good interview looks like. And from that, we can say, here is your grade for this interview. You got 4-star. And then you can gamify and say, right, here's who's doing the best interviews. And all this stuff is so easy to do now. So for me, it's more like this smorgasbord of ideas and thinking, Jesus, right, we have to pick one and pick our lane. But what's going to be most impactful?
So even you talking about that has now given me a load of ideas. So it's because I'm endlessly fascinated by recruitment. Like I love recruitment for what it is, but there's so many challenges. You'd go to an agency and say, I need someone with 10 years C++ experience and ideally some experience in Unix and STL and Boost, blah, 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 whatever. And then you would interview people against those skills. You'd find people that were the most skillful and the least amount of a dick. And then you'd hire them.
That's a skill in itself.
It's a skill in itself. Now, anecdotally, in terms of feedback I get from candidates doing interviews, but also clients hiring and what they want and everything else, they don't care about skills so much anymore. Skills is the given that you need to have to get through the door. They care about outcomes. Show me how you've delivered outcomes in the past. Like, show me how you've got stuff done. Show me how you've traversed complex environments where you have to context shift. You have to deal with different stakeholders. Some of them might be very, very technical and you need to be able to speak a technical language. Some of them might be very investment trading oriented and not speak that technical language at all. And you need to be able to get them bought in as well. Like, show me a rounded skill set that delivers on outcome. And that's where I think now the shift is going. And can you capture that in a resume? Maybe not. But certainly from a perspective of what makes a good recruiter, someone who can deliver outcomes, what makes a good software engineer, someone who can deliver outcomes, what makes a good product, something that delivers outcomes against problems that people are trying to solve for.
You know, they call that apparently a full stack employee.
Yeah, I've heard that.
It's a good
or
one,
a multidisciplinary. What was it? Greg called it. He said we need people that have a multidisciplinary skill set. So we need people that can do not jack of all trades, master of none, like jack of lots of trades, really, really fucking good at all of them.
Yeah.
And that now is playing out. But sort of one of the reasons we call this podcast the top 10% is because it's what I kind of see every day. The top 10% of these people have these rounded skill sets. They can communicate. They understand enough about the business to know why they're there and what the commercial value of what they do is. They understand lots about technology, but if on the software side, they've also got a fairly deep automation, DevOps oriented skill set, and they probably know a little bit into the infra. And if they're on the BA side, they also can run project work streams and they can do a bit of product and they can write some scripts and they can write some fairly complex queries in SQL or whatever. Those people now, they're the ones we're trying to hire for all the time. It's incredibly rare to find someone who doesn't have 4 or 5 other really, really good companies after them at the same time. These people can't move for opportunities. And you've got these big brands, heavyweight banks and hedge funds and big tech firms competing for this ever shrinking pool of people. And then you've got everyone else and no one's competing for them. This is the feedback I'm getting from industry people that have been around a long time and are good. And it's like, I just can't, I can't get traction. I can't get interviews.
Do people want more startup type employees then, even if they're not startups? It sounds like it.
But I think what we're seeing now is a perspective of we can support people so much with technology. We can enable engineers to do so much more than what we used to be able to enable them to do, because you can support them so much better with the tools and the functionality that they need. But for them to do so much more, they need to understand more around the business and what we're doing. They need to be innovative. So now you've got a lot of these people that take contracts, for example. I know a bunch of guys that were 750 pound a day contractors, Java, C#, whatever, like good people. They're really struggling to find a job. But I think that plays out, like you said, you know, pre-post AI, 90-10. I think it plays out in recruitment. I think it plays out in tech. I think it plays out everywhere.
You made a good point earlier about they're just going to blast loads of things with AI writing. Essentially, AI will create volume. You know what I mean? Like you just, I can now reach out to 10,000 candidates at the same time, and I think the not as good recruiters will do that probably. Yeah. But for us, recruitment is a service. And I think that if you try to replace the people at the front lines, you're going to make a bad business, because people buy from people. Now, when we think about the big things we're going to be doing the rest of the year, so the RevOps agent, it's essentially, instead of how do I make you send 10,000 emails, it's how do I quickly assess 10,000 opportunities and then say, hey, Craig, I've looked at everything. I've looked at all the ways you could do business and I've crunched everything. Here are the 15 best things that we could do today. And I've taken the liberty of doing some drafting, but you might say, thank you very much, Atlas, but I'm going to give this person a call on the same topic, good topic, but that's a call. This one, I might do something else. So, because you've got a game theory of this, right? Now everyone has access to a system that can write encyclopedic emails to people. I had one I even put on LinkedIn, this morning of this recording. It was like, oh, Jordan, I see your Atlas there. Here's 3 cohorts that you could sell to, executive search. And then it regurgitated my LinkedIn banner paragraph.
Yeah.
And you're thinking to yourself, yes, if this was not an AI, I'd be like, oh, he's done a lot of research. Maybe it is bona fide. Now it's almost like, well, I'm a line in a clay table. That is it. So this is almost worse. What is better is this thing should be saying to whoever the pioneer, saying like, Jordan does these things. He looks at these markets. We could talk about this. What do you reckon?
Yeah.
And he might be a good, so that's where I think it's going to go. That's what I want to
I got one of them yesterday. My title is Managing Director - Headhunter. And I got one saying, we have worked with multiple other Managing Director - Headhunters to help them do this, this, and this. And we find that Managing Director - Headhunters really, and I was just like,
this sucks.
Yeah.
This sucks. But the what's going to happen is the volume of crap email is going to skyrocket. So you could quite easily get caught into spam filters now these days, I would think. Because I've actually noticed, I said to another friend of mine last week that somehow my Microsoft accounts have just got way better at detecting spam emails. Hardly any are actually getting through to, so this one I was telling you about just got into my junk. So I'm really getting quite rarely this coming to my email now. And I'd love to know what's happened that they've suddenly got good. Because there was a period of time where I would just be deleting all the time and it suddenly just stopped.
Yeah.
So maybe they just thought, Jesus Christ, there's an onslaught of, and so anything that mildly looks like, this IP sent roughly the same email 6 times, so therefore block it. Maybe it's got that restrictive.
Do you think there will be an emergence of like the rec ops engineer?
What would you be defining as a rec ops engineer?
Someone that comes with an engineering skill set where they build bespoke proprietary things that leverage Clay or they leverage Atlas and they integrate a load of different things together, built tailor-made for the use cases of certain agencies and how they do business. Probably
yes, actually. I was looking at Clay because we want to integrate a couple of the really cool sourcing tools into Atlas in the very near future. And we were trying to think about what's a good way we can get all of them at once without too much work. And I was just trying to figure out how Clay's webhook works. And it is not easy. It's very technical. And even me, who is a technologist, was watching a YouTube video numerous times to figure out what on earth is going on. These things are still not the easiest to scaffold. And I think it's a different skill set. So there is, and because it depends on what market you're in, I suppose. Because, if you're thinking about making these warm-up campaigns, or you have candidates you want to keep warm over time, there's different systems that do that, and you want to spin data from one to another to do all this stuff, then probably yes. And these things are continuous pieces of work. Now, with Atlas, the idea is that while we don't want to do the whole stack, clearly we are trying to get rid of a bit of that, because you don't have to scaffold your note taker to your system. You don't have to scaffold your sourcing campaigns to your CRMs. This is all integrated and just spins nicely together. But clearly, I don't want to copy Dripify nor Clay with great products, but I want to work with them and I want to integrate them. That isn't, it's not level 1 of easy. So I do think that, and I wonder if it's more of a contract piece of work. Like, do you have the rec ops lady who comes in and sets it up, and then you pay her like a retainer to, you get your ideas, you need 3 days that month, 4 days that month.
Yeah.
That I could see probably happening if you've built your system that way.
I think there's be a lot of bandwidth, just in terms of there's so much out there, but everyone has all these different needs and different flows relative to, like, it's such a varied marketplace, recruitment, in terms of what agencies actually do. And you're very much reflective of the companies that you work for in terms of your recruitment practices. So if you recruit for companies that hire in volume, then you have to recruit in volume, and you have to build methodologies to enable you to do that. So Atlas, I would imagine, is going to go quite a long way in making that very, very customizable and bespoke for different agencies to use in the way they best see fit, and probably other products as well. But yeah, potentially there's an avenue for the more engineering mindseted recruiters, or recruitment oriented engineers to go and create opportunities, freelance, to go into agencies and say, look, I can take these different tech products that you're now using, because people seem to have quite a broad portfolio of tech that they're trying to play with,
which actually makes it quite difficult to keep playing with it. I think that's one of the key things of, when you look at Bullhorn, what a great product that is in terms of, they won the market, or at least they did win the last generation of the market. And they acquired all the good products that were out there consistently. Customers tell me, and so I'm distant, but I hear some have been integrated well, some are still not well integrated. So to use Bullhorn fully, it's actually quite complex in and of itself, which then requires a RecOps person to get it all integrated. So our view is, while we can't get to the breadth of theirs as very quickly, there is a beauty of making a system that really just slickly moves things around all the component pieces, so the recruiter doesn't have to worry about RecOps. And they know that if there is RecOps requirements, it's going to be not that complicated.
Yeah. And it's just, again, I just find it really so interesting to think about where the industry can go, because I've seen the different arc over my time of the way that I've recruited has changed very organically in that time, based on, to an extent, who the clients are. But the clients have always been financial services, and it's always been technology, more with the tools that you have to play with. But we seem to be at a point where there was always not that many tools. So you just had to get really good at the ones that you wanted to use with, in terms of, like, if you were always in LinkedIn Recruiter searching for people, you've got to get really good at Boolean searching. But that's only one thing that you've kind of got to get really good at. And then the rest of it is just the recruitment side of it. But now there's so much choice. There's so many options with regard to what you can pull from different places. And there's so many use cases of, like, how technology can add so much value to recruiters. And then I would hope that in turn that makes the work they do into their respective marketplaces better. And it should create better candidate experiences, better client experiences, more long-term repeat business, less people being really pissed off with recruiters all the time because they're not doing a very good job. Hopefully that's what comes out of it. But that's going to become, probably for companies, a little bit of a skill set, maybe not recruiter to recruiter, but more of a COO type person is going to have to start looking at, well, what is our tech stack? And then what's out there? What's the new product that's emerged, and how can that add more value, and how can we make it more bespoke to what we do? That's going to probably become a full-time job in itself, because there's so much now.
And it's the biggest change there has been.
Yes.
Like, recruitment is going to change so fundamentally. And that's what's kind of exciting about this. The way recruitment is going to be done is going to change quite drastically, because you just don't need to do any of the admin anymore, which is quite exciting, I think. Wonder what people will do with all this time now. Go to the pub. I wonder if the people that are good are going to get better, because the one thing they probably dislike is the admin, which they just don't want to do. Because people tell me a very common thread is the best recruiters are the worst administrators.
Yeah, I'm a prime example of that. I'd like to consider myself to be a pretty good recruiter. I've been around a long time. I've got a very good reputation. My admin is useless, like absolutely useless. And I'd be the first to admit it. I'm terrible at it because I don't put any effort into it. And I've got quite a good memory. So I sort of think, I'll just remember that anyway. And invariably, I don't remember the things that I forgot. So who knows? But
so if all good recruiters are terrible at admin, then surely the value of admin is not as high as people think it is. So then why do they spend so much time doing it?
I think you're doing most of the admin for the next person that comes along in line, the next recruiter, personally. Because I know all my stuff. But like we were discussing earlier, someone on my team needs to also know that stuff in order for them to best do their job, because it's going to be very helpful for them to know who I've been talking to, not talking to, how someone got on in that process or this process. If I've, over the last 2 years, had 200 people get to final stage with a company but not get offered a job, that's quite useful information for someone to know. But the people in my business probably don't know it, because my admin's not good enough to record all of that data properly.
Until now.
So, but I agree. I mean, fundamentally, I think the next few years are going to be so exciting for the industry. And it's an opportunity, I think, for recruiters to actually get really good at the job and to take the other stuff away from it. What's the outlook for Atlas? Like, I know you're very early stages, but what are the goals? What are you foreseeing?
I think that we have an opportunity to be as big as the number one player. This paradigm shift is so foundationally different. It's not possible, really, for a competitor of ours who've existed before AI to do what we're doing. Not because we're any smarter, but because they've got an old system, an old data model. They've got the old process of which they support thousands of customers. And therefore, it's not possible for you to say, hey, customers, we're going to rip up the whole flipping playbook, because you'll lose your customers. So what we are offering is just something totally different. And I think the proof in the pudding is the very clear eating of it. Look, it's 2 years, right? It's 2 years since GPT-4 came around. 2 years. Where is the real AI products from any of these CRMs, to be blunt? We can do writing there, great. You can generate a JD, spectacular. There's nothing beyond, you can just do what ChatGPT does here instead of there, and it's a worse product anyway. And that's the great thing, right? If it wasn't a big opportunity, we would see loads of great AI coming out from existing CRMs, but we have not.
There you have it.
There we go.
Mate, thank you so much.
A pleasure.
For coming in. And thanks for your time.
A real pleasure.